review committee. I have asked for students to be excluded on multiple occasions, including the March 28th meeting about genderqueer. The response from the board was they were proud to have student involvement and that will not change. I met with our new superintendent a couple of weeks ago requesting one last time students be excluded. After checking with the board, he informed me I must follow the outline process so students will be on the initial review committee. These are some of the books they will read. I won't read excerpts because of time constraints and because it is so graphic, but I will leave excerpts if you'd like to review them. Tricks: 5 troubled teenagers fall into prostitution. The book graphically details the sexual encounters. Not That Bad: Dispatches from Rape Culture presents an anthology of 29 personal essays from men and women. Each author shares personal stories of rape, abuse, molestation, and harassment. The Kiss Quotient: this is a book about a 30-something-year-old woman who wants to improve sexually and hires an escort. Even the summary on the back cover of the book, I think, would have raised concerns. It said, he can't afford to turn down Stella's offer and agrees to help her check off all the boxes on her lesson plan, from foreplay to more than missionary position. How do these books even make it into the libraries? After attending my Department of Education hearing with West Des Moines on June 8th, I now believe there is no book in the library that is deemed inappropriate. My lawyer questioned the board president and superintendent, and neither could provide an example of content that wouldn't be allowed in school. He asked more specific questions of the superintendent related to content, asking categorically, would you consider a book that has photographics of naked adults in sexual situations to be inappropriate in any school library? The response: so I believe if we had a book that someone had a concern about, we would follow policy 60505 and determine if that book should be allowed in the library. As a follow-up to clarify, he asked, so the answer to my question is no, it's not categorically inappropriate. You would have to look at the book and make a decision through your process. Is that right? The response: we would use the policy and follow the policy to make the decision. Yes. I submitted another book for reconsideration last fall at the high school. The review committee for that book was provided a packet, and in it, it instructs them decisions of reconsideration should be made using the principles of freedom to read and be based on these broad principles rather than in defense of individual materials. The Freedom to Read document is put out by the American Library Association. This is the same organization who sponsored and promotes Banned Book Week to encourage kids to read books that have been challenged. I share the above details to demonstrate that truly today, any book is acceptable in our schools. My district is not the only one. I know of several districts across the state who are battling the same issues. We trusted what was accepted in our schools, and we didn't believe books with graphic, sexually explicit, and pervasively vulgar content would be available to our children. Having ratings to protect children and inform parents is not a new idea. Movies, video games, and music have ratings. My district, and I'm sure many others in Iowa, take measures to protect our children from sexually explicit, pornographic, and adult content using technology to block students' access to sites. Could a student get access to content other ways? Probably, but the schools actively attempt to put controls in place so that content is not available on the student's school devices. I also get an email weekly with my child's browsing history. Books in the public schools should adhere to those same standards. All accountability ties back to the policy and process. However, the current policies for receiving materials via ebooks, hard copy books, and audiobooks, and for reconsideration of materials in our school do not address concerns related to actual content of the books. I have copies of the policies. At a minimum, I believe there needs to be a rating system for clear, objective standards regarding content for books accepted in the library and classrooms, as well as for committees when books are being reconsidered. I would like controls put in, and books that have graphic, sexually explicit, and pervasively vulgar content based on that criteria. I'm almost done. If a book is being reconsidered, I would like for sexual content, students could be removed, and parents could get a notification when a book is checked out. Finally, whose children are they? Children belong to parents. In raising our children, we need to know what content is available to them and what they're being exposed to. As we attempt to engage with schools by asking questions and in turn following the processes and policies, schools appear to be doubling down and becoming defensive rather than wanting to work as a team. Speaking as someone who has gone through the entire process, I'm asking for your help. As my lawyer stated in the last meeting, you are appointed by law to superintend the school board's function and how the system of education functions in our state. And you would make an enormous impact by simply saying, you know what, this is too much, it's gone too far. Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
I only made 2. It's kind of expensive, but anyway, feel free to keep those.
Thank you. Thank you for making the trip up.
Yeah.
We have other public comment.
For participants on the webinar, if you wish to address the board, please use the raised hand feature at the bottom of your screen. If you're calling in by phone, you can press *9 to raise your hand. Okay, I will allow the participant in the ICN room to talk. Can you please introduce yourself?
Yes, my name is Krista McAfee. I'm excited to be here. I actually traveled. I'm traveling from Arizona. I'm picking up an RV here, and I have a love of the game clause like Michael Jordan for education. So decided to stop here and come to the board meeting to kind of see what's going on. But like I've been to a lot of board meetings nationwide. I'm here because I want to help with the storytelling, right? I feel that the story can be told better as far as public education. So I wrote a book, Superintendents Take the Best Selfies, right? Because I surveyed a few people here in 8th grade and in high school, and I asked them like, hey, you know what a superintendent is, a board is, right? So the issue is a lot of people don't know what a superintendent is, what the board is, and it hurts the public because when they don't know, that's where the teacher shortages come in at, right? Fortunately, they have, in my opinion, the school system has an advantage, right? Time, right? So the time is that you have them from kindergarten to 12th grade, right? And so, in my opinion, the story has to be told better to capture the individual and help them become a teacher or a principal or a superintendent or a board member, versus them working for Apple or any other major companies out there. So that's why I believe my books are important. Telling the story is important correctly. So I on the way to the board meeting, I took a lift and I asked the gentleman, I said, hey, what's one thing you would improve about, the education? And, he said, you know what, I have a grandson. My grandson plays baseball right now, right? And I would like him to basically have his story told well. So why am I saying that, right? Because looking at the social media, it's a gap right now, right, between what's going on in the real world and what's going on with education. And it kind of hurts me deep in my soul because it's like you have all the assets, right? You have people who can play sports, right, which goes viral on social media. You have people who can cook, draw, right? All these different things that helps tell a story well, but it's not being told right? And so that's what I want to help with, tell the story right and provide great content that helps the child be more educated on what's going on around them, because we say we want diversity, equity, and inclusion. We say we want lifelong learning, but if I can go up to 100 different kids and ask them, hey, what's a superintendent? They look at me like I'm crazy, right? That's not lifelong learning. That's not diversity, equity, and inclusion, right? And so addressing these areas of telling the story better, right, will help with your recruiting, with your enrollment, and help with your engagement. And, that's why I created Superintendents Take the Best Selfies. And, I'll send you a copy of it. And my goal is to, like I say, help tell a better story, right, which will increase engagement. And, I'm excited to be here. So that's it. That's my story.
Thank you for your participation. Good luck on your book. We have other people for public comment this morning.
There are no other raised hands.
All right, we will continue with the agenda with the director's report.
Okay, well, thank you. And it's great to be here up in Forest City at this beautiful location. One quick update, because we changed the location of our meeting, Davenport was originally supposed to come and provide an update to the board. We mutually agreed that we would delay that until the next meeting, but I wanted to make sure you're aware that we did talk about that, and so they will provide an update in November. If that made sense. We did have an update just the other day on some of our school safety initiatives that are being offered through our partnership with Homeland Security. They are very actively and aggressively responding to the vulnerability assessments. I believe they can have all of them done. I think they said by May of this first year. And that assessment is what allows the schools then to move forward with the potential funding of up to $50,000 per building. It is not only done through, they have a contract with Tetra Tech, but schools can also have local law enforcement or local partners do that work. They provided resources on what needs to be done, but all of this is just to ensure that schools have access to funds that can help them make the upgrades that make the most sense for their district. So we're really excited about the timeline on that and the work that's being done there. The radios are available for choice. There's a couple different ones they can look at, and then we'll be sending out information on the critical incident mapping that I talked to you about that lays out that virtual map of the location, the structure of their current facilities, and communicates in a way that makes sense for first responders and can be shared with broader law enforcement agencies in the area. There will also be information going out on training for schools. I know some of us, we talked previously about, there used to be a training called ALICE. This is a training called ALERT. It's the Advanced Law Enforcement Rapid Response Training. It's specific to schools. So that will be coming out soon also.
Clever acronym.
as available training. So a lot of positive feedback on that. We've been very purposeful in making sure all schools are engaged. Anytime we see a response in there that says, no, I don't want this, we call them and say, are you sure, and did you mean to say no? We follow up, and most of them change that response to yes. One school was a virtual school, so they didn't need it. So that makes sense. So we've been very actively involved. Eric Sinclair has run point on our team quite a bit. Rachel's also been part of that process also. They've been tremendous partners with the School Safety Bureau, making sure schools get the information they need. In that conversation also came up, a question was brought up about, isn't cybersecurity part of school safety also? And we all agree, absolutely 100%. There is some resources available through OCIO that we'll be sharing with schools, and then looking at additional possible trainings for school staff who are interested, just to make sure they have the knowledge they need to stay safe. What we hear often is that when one of these ransom events happen, they've been in the system for months ahead of time, and then they're shopping the content around on the black market until the request is made. There are resources available to identify that earlier, and they usually get in through people click on something, people sharing information, people using personal, work resources for personal use, and that's how they get in. So we're training on that. We're going to help track both as well. We've seen, unfortunately, a trend in that area for schools. The last thing, then, just a quick update I want to give you that may eventually come back as a board action item. This board, it was in last March of 2021, approved the Iowa State School Business Management Academy for an additional 7 years. So that is the academy that does the SBO training, the School Business Official Training. It's the only provider. They've been a very successful provider. John is involved in that work also. And on June 30th of 2022, both the director and the mentor coordinator resigned. Since then, we had heard some concerns about mentors not being assigned to the new SBOs. And so we had follow-up with academy representatives and asked some questions. Since that time, they shared that we believe most of the mentors have been assigned, or most of the SBOs have been assigned a mentor. But we did still have some questions on some philosophical changes on how they plan to run the program, and some changes that would potentially trigger them being asked to come back to the board for additional review. One of the concerning elements was that previously the individuals in charge of the program held an SBO authorization and worked in that position in school. One position is now being replaced by 3 that combined, they have less than 2 years of being school experience. So we had some questions that we did not feel we received satisfactory answers to. We've asked the program to provide us with updates. At this point, that has not been really agreed upon. So we may be either asking for more information or asking them to come back to this board again for consideration.
There's a concern.
There's a
Needs to
concern.
be addressed, and it's dealing with the accreditation is based on practitioners presenting, not people who have not been in.
So we will continue to engage on that conversation and update you if we receive information or maybe asking for them back for additional questions. At that point, I believe that is all I have right now. With anyone who has any questions for me.
No, just a comment, I'm a part-time interim superintendent and filling out the DD forms for requesting the assessment of the school building, or if we want a radio, it's like open, click, submit, open, click, submit. It couldn't be easier. And I received an email this morning for Homeland Security to come in to do the assessment. So that's
Great.
And Rod, you've been in business too, as far as security and whatever. And we've been through the Alice. I wasn't aware of the alerts training and maybe.
Yeah, they've done the alerts training. Already.
They can't underestimate the importance of school safety. It's part of Maslow's hierarchy is that nothing matters until you feel safe.
To school districts purchase insurance for cybersecurity infiltration.
They can. And so what we've heard is some of the schools that have had an incident, and what happens, it triggers a different type of response. Their team comes in, insurance brings in their own kind of assessment team, and they negotiate from there. It does include usually some sort of IT specialist, ransom negotiator person, and they kind of manage the event. Outside of the insurance, there are other resources available to come in, but they may not cover the cost, because a lot of them that we've seen have paid the ransom to get the information back. But yes, it is available. Any other questions?
And I think I asked this last time, in case I did, the school, all the school safety applies to accredited non-public.
Yes, yes.
Okay. Thank you. We have the consent agenda. For the minutes from June 9th. Chapter 97 rules and supplemental weighting. And then we have rules for chapters 19, 23, 41, 60, 67, 68, 77, 79, 98, 20. Bingo. Okay.
Powerball. I move approval of the agenda as presented.
There's been a motion to approve the consent agenda. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. You got Georgia on the big screen that way, Georgia.
This might be bigger than the one in our boardroom.
Oh, no. God, that's gotta be scary.
All right, next item on the agenda is Iowa e-learning central update.
Good morning.
Good morning.
This is Barbara. This is Barbara Olin here with you today. Thank you so much for taking your time to talk a little bit about Iowa eLearning Central. I'm going to be sharing my screen, and I think I'm going to stop my video just because Zoom is being kind of fussy. So I'm going to turn off my video but share my screen. Sorry about that. The Iowa e-learning central project, the origination of this was really from Director Lebo's brain during COVID, thinking about how we can best provide the high quality content like units and courses across our state for all of our students to be able to access and all of our teachers to be able to access regardless of content, and have that content developed and supported by our Iowa licensed teachers. So although that was the origination, I just want to make sure everybody understands that Iowa eLearning Central is not just about online learning. It is about online, hybrid, and face-to-face learning. So the content that's available on Iowa eLearning Central can be used in any way that a district or school sees fit. And when I'm talking about Iowa eLearning Central, we're really talking about 3 specific areas of ILC. One area is called the resource library, and the resource library is specific to resources that are to support learning from an educator point of view, a student point of view, and a parent point of view. Now, currently, a lot of the resources there are specific to online learning because of the origination of this grant. And so we submitted for the grant, I think in 2020, Director Lebo can correct me if I'm wrong, and received it. So we were able to develop all of the resources then that are available. We are now transitioning to ensure that all the resources there are just specific to good instruction and learning. The other part is the course repository, and the course repository is really broken up into 2 different sections. There's a behind the scenes area and an area that everybody can access and see. And the behind the scenes area is really for content developers to develop the content that eventually makes it into the course repository. Those people are our Iowa licensed educators that help develop the quality units and courses that align directly to Iowa academic standards. They go through a rigorous review before they make it to the course repository. And then the public view is a searchable area to be able to find the courses that might fit within a specific school or district needs. And then the final area is called the Student Course Exchange kind of for short. And that's really a matchup site between districts where districts can basically advertise seats that they have open, and then districts can also advertise seats that are needed. So if school X has seats open in Algebra 1 and school Y does not is not able to serve that need for students, and they are able to kind of match those needs and then work out a 2080 agreement between them. And I'm going to go through some of these a little bit more in detail. So when I talk about the resource library, when you go there, it kind of looks like this, and you can click on resources either for educators or for students or for families. And within that, you'll find different resources such as resources around accessibility and usability, online readiness checklist, how to get ready for an online class. And remember, we're transitioning to not just online resources now. So now it's going to be just how to get ready for a class, how to get things done, how to work with others, and so on. And social emotional behavioral. Within the resource library, we have student vignettes that are connected to each one of these areas. So when you go into the resources, you can find these videos. And I just want to play you kind of a snippet or one of the videos that you can kind of see what I mean by student videos.
When you're learning online, you have to stay focused.
So to get me out of bed in the morning, I choose a pretty hardcore song or hardcore rap song that I personally like, but my parents do not like. And that really helps me get out of bed because it motivates me to get out of bed, but it also motivates me to turn off the alarm so that my parents don't come in and yell at me for my questionable taste in music.
Whenever an assignment is assigned either in person or online, I like to get it done as fast as I can. So if there's work time, I like to just knock it out because, you know, procrastinating it's just going to be a bigger burden. I'm going to maybe possibly forget about it, and then it's really going to be a pain in my butt. So I try to do that, but if I can't do that, what I do is on my phone I have the reminders app, and you can make like a list. And so I type in finish English paper or do math assignment. So that's how I stay organized on both online and in person.
I'm a big procrastinator, and I didn't want to let that get to me, although it's happened sometimes, but I'm quite bad at, you know, allocating time and just like keeping on schedule and stuff. So what I would do was outside of like my class hours, I would just take the time out of the equation and just jot down a sticky note of like 4 or 5 main goals that I wanted to accomplish that day. So whether that's deadlines or studying for a test, I would keep like a short to-do list and finish that with the time I had left. And I felt like that worked better. I know some people work better when they do like 4 to 5 p.m. math homework, 5 to 6 p.m. like chemistry homework and all that. But I felt like when I didn't meet those times or when I went overtime, I felt really overwhelmed. So I just wanted to get a few priorities done and done thoroughly. And I felt like that's what worked for me.
I remember telling one of my friends, and this was sort of after I'd figured it out for myself, just to make a schedule because the screen is inescapable. I mean, it's online school. And so if you make an everyday schedule of I'm going to exercise, this is when I eat, this is my time for myself, and it can be anything. I like to play guitar in my free time or skateboard or draw or anything, but just like making sure you put time for yourself to do something that's not on your phone, because a lot of times when kids think of downtime, they're like, okay, I'm going to scroll through TikTok, I'm going to watch an episode of my favorite show or something, and then it's just that screen again. So, yeah.
The specific time management things that I use to keep myself on schedule where I'm like a really big due dates person, so I like to prioritize my homework by what I need to get done the quickest. And then I would start with the hard stuff so that by the time my motivation was kind of tapering out, I just had the easy assignments left. And then I would just set timers where it was like, okay, I get 5-minute break once I finish this, and then I can hop back into it, just to kind of give myself a little time to relax so I didn't feel like I was just sitting and working all day long.
My lifeline is my mom. I'll just tell her. I mean, and my alarm clock. Because with the Zoom meetings, you got to be on time. So Google Calendar is your best friend, your alarm clock, and your mom. Those are the 3 things you need.
So, I love that video, and I especially love the 3 things that are needed for success in online in an online environment. So you can yourself go and see all of the videos we have available within the resource library yourself. So I'm going to start the slideshow again and share screen. So we are going to continue to make those vignettes and exploring making short teacher videos as well and parent videos. When you go into the course repository, this is what you're going to see, and everybody has access to this. So you can see all this information. You can search for subject area, course format, grade level, license, and so on. When you pull up a specific course, so when you click on one of those courses, you're going to see something that looks like this. And so you can see the grade level in the upper left-hand corner, what the course format is. So we have units, we have semesters, we have full year courses, and then the license type And we have an explanation of what those license types mean as you download the course. You have the course description and all the information you might need. Now, I just want to punctuate that all the units and courses are available for districts and schools for download. And when you download them, then you can upload them into your local learning management system. And we have a list of what those learning management systems are that are compatible. So you can use any learning management system that you want, but we also do reimburse for Canvas as well as local learning management systems that are compatible to Canvas. So I wanted to, so what about all these teachers, right? These licensed teachers that create content? Well, we have rounds of development and we're currently in round 3, and round 3 was kicked off in July. And this was the first time you brought everybody together. Round 1 and round 2 was really done virtually and individually with content developers. And our content developers are our licensed teachers that respond to an RF request for information or a list, and they have the knowledge and skills, a license, expertise to develop the units or the courses that we need. And they work with content experts and instructional designers and are led by our DE content consultants. We have some incredibly strong expertise within the department itself, and that's part of their work to be able to help content developers and the instructional designers and content experts to lift this work. So we had this event in July. It was 3 days. We had lots of people attending. You can see the 8 content consultants from the DE. We had instructional designers there, 43 content experts, and 152 content developers. And that's our licensed educators. This training was specific to K-5 unit development. And our feedback indicated that people really appreciated the collaboration with their unit developers and the content experts and the instructional designers. The work time that we had across those 3 days, we in no way expected any unit to be done within 3 days. This was a kickoff so that everybody could work together, get organized, get the information they needed to be able to develop units. We also had workshops at the event to help with understanding instructional design and online content. And we had templates available across most of the content areas. There were some that did not have content specific templates. We did a general template. And so for improvement, folks want content specific templates. So the next time we do this, we will do that, and content specific instructional routines or strategies. So those are the things that the next time we do this, we'll make sure that we improve those 2 areas. So here's what we have. You can go to that QR code, or you can type in elearningscentral.iowa.gov. We have all the course descriptions available, and we are continually adding courses. There's like 3 more courses that were added this week, and we let folks know when they're added. So this was a list as of a week ago, so it's outdated now, but you can for sure find these things when you do a search. So and again, round 1 and round 2 is really focused on 6 through 12. This round 3 is focused on K-5. And then round 4 is going to be focused on some revisions of content that's been available for a little while. So round 1 content. We'll have another round 5 as well that we are going to have a survey that goes out this fall asking, okay, so what other content do you want? So we'll get that good feedback across the state. This is in current development right now. And when we get to round 4, there's going to be more listed here. And now we did a very soft launch of the course exchange. It is available now. And the reason why it was quiet is because we asked 3 districts basically to try to break it, to make sure that we are ready for saying, hey, the course exchange is ready, and please go ahead and indicate if you have seats to offer or seats that you need to request. It is very intuitive when you go to the exchange part of the site. It's very intuitive, leading you through the information that you would need to be able to advertise the seats that you have requested, or be able to advertise, hey, I need seat, like I have these students, I have these learners that need a particular course. So we're very excited about this, and soon we'll be officially launching this. So you get access to ILC through the portal, and all of, let me restate that. That was that could lead to confusion, what I just said. Everybody has access to ILC, but if you want to download a course, you access it through the portal. And so if you have access to the portal, then you just are allowed to then have access to the download capabilities of ILC. And we do suggest that just maybe 1 or 2 people within a district or within a school have that capability in order to understand and know how your units and courses are being used across the district or across the school. So I believe that's all the content, all the slides I have on ILC. We are incredibly excited about all of the content that's being generated. I just want to also let you know that every single course and every single unit goes through what we call the quality rubric, and has criteria for the quality of the unit or the course, and also the alignment to standards and instructional design features. So by the time it makes it to that course repository, it meets that high bar of quality. So when you download a unit or when you download a course, you know that it is aligned to the standards that it states that it's aligned to, and it's of high quality. I'll put my video back on.
Are you looking for questions now?
I would urge you to go look at Iowa eLearning Central and see what you think. You know what, we're always looking for feedback on what type of video vignettes that people would find helpful, and what additional courses would be helpful. We are going to be launching a survey asking those things as well.
Do you track these in some way so you know how many times they have been accessed?
Yes. Yeah, we track page views and we track downloads. So we know who has downloaded, what school has downloaded. Yes.
What are the costs involved if you are wanting a student involved with another school's course?
We do not have any costs. ILC is completely free. The course exchange is really a match site. And then once there is a match between districts, okay, I have these seats and I want these seats, then that has to do with the districts. They enter into that agreement. Our involvement stops at that point.
Could a small district use this to meet the requirement of offer and teach?
I believe so, but go ahead. I'm sorry, Ann.
There's no teacher with this.
Right.
They found a match with a teacher, yes, and they made that agreement like a regular 2080 agreement. This just provides resources so that if your school that you are struggling to fill some of this, eventually you can match with somebody else. Like right now, you kind of do 2080s with your own region. You could broaden that across the state. It also helps provide content for schools that may not have that information, wants to offer a course. I can pull this down and use it in any way I
As long as the teacher is licensed for the unit or course that they are pulling down and teaching, they can use it in any way they want. They can use it online, they can use it face-to-face, they can use a hybrid. And Director Lebo made a really important point that we have to punctuate all the time, and that is no teachers are attached to this. This is free content. So when you enter into that agreement, you know, it has to be an agreement, obviously, with a licensed teacher teaching a specific course.
One of the next phases of things we want to look at is some of those most hard to fill ones where, let's say you had a cooking class you want to offer and with limited instructors. How could you blend something where you have some sort of virtual shared experience and then a hands-on graded experience also, because we know that that's another area that we hear a lot about, or it's a shortage area in need. So that might come out our next round. We get the teachers to propose different ways that could look like. That's another way to really just expand resources for districts that don't have it.
It's like the welding with 3D or
VR.
yeah.
I have to say, this is a massive project. And it was a $17.7 million grant that we applied for and got. And the scope of what this has done in a short amount of time is really impressive. And I say this every time, but the most impressive part is the number of teachers that want to be part of this and that they can make up to $15,000 a piece for different courses. What a great way to recognize Iowa teachers and build something for Iowa teachers by Iowa teachers. That, I think, is what makes this extra special. And thank you to Barbara because it is even just how you make a cartridge that you can download and put into a system. I had no idea how complicated that was until we started looking at this process. So there's a lot behind the scenes to make this accessible, so you can just go to the site and access it.
Yeah, it's simple, but there are a lot of moving parts and a lot of plates to navigate and ensure that none of those fall. And just to piggyback on what you were saying, and the unit development, we pay $37.50 because it's short. It's like a month of content. $37.50 for the student materials and $37.50 for the teacher facing materials. And then for a course, which is a semester-long course, we pay $7,500 for the student materials and $7,500 for the teacher-facing materials. And we have wonderful teams working. It's a lot of people working at the kind of all at the same time on all different parts of the puzzle, and lots of people supporting them.
Do you have a process in place for evaluation or review as far as how things are going? I know you talked about getting feedback loop as far as what offer and who's looking at.
We have a survey that we conduct annually. We're going to do it a little bit sooner this year than we normally would, because we want to be able to inform that round 5 of course development that we're going to have to start advertising for in November in order to hold it in the summer. So we have an annual survey. We also have user feedback embedded directly in the site. So every so often we have the button say, provide us feedback directly on the site. And we also have what's called community conversations or focus groups that we have once or twice a year. And we like to schedule them kind of at the conclusion of a semester, just to kind of make it coincide with the conclusion of perhaps implementing a unit or a course. We are also on the precipice of asking for direct evaluation and feedback from schools that have implemented a unit or a course, so that we can use that information to make the units and courses even stronger and better.
So is there, you mentioned the instructor content, but is there actual professional development like live or online for the educators as well?
Yeah, that's a really good question. What we're doing right now is, as I said, we're in the process of helping to evaluate those units and courses for people who have used it. And we're going to do that through what's called implementation manager. And that kind of role will help with that direct professional development and support for implementation of districts and schools who choose to use the units and courses. We don't have like this massive professional development attached to this. We're going to have kind of individualized professional development kind of on demand kind of.
This has to be just such a time saving for the teachers who are using it to be able to go out and have available content that they don't have to create on their own and just place in their classroom.
And even I see it from a superintendent's position, they could even save a large amount of funding if they in curriculum adoptions because it's all right there. It's aligned to the standards. The full courses are lined out, and they could use all that online material and not have to purchase materials like we traditionally have been doing.
And consistency for learning across the state of Iowa.
Yes, and that's huge.
Was there a goal originally as to how often this would be used? Or do you know just numerically, how many people avail themselves of this? It sounds like a great opportunity.
Yeah, we had a goal of how many teachers and students we would touch. So it was actually a number. And so our goal was to touch or potentially touch around 97,000 students across the state. Right now we're at, I think, 26,000, and we just 23 courses, right? So now when we're going to have 30 more courses, and it's probably more than 23 now because we have more releases, but we have 34 more courses coming online. The K-5 development is 171 units that will be coming online. And then we're going to continue. Then we have around 4 and we have around 5. And I'm thinking probably around 6 and around 7 before the grant concludes. So we have to also kind of be in conversations about how do we sustain this, because the courses will need review as we go. You need to kind of put them on a review schedule. Every 3 years, you need to go through and see and review those that have been on the site for 3 years and update, make sure everything works, make sure it all reflects any changes in, we sometimes have changes in our Iowa academic standards, and we have to be able to reflect those.
Is there reporting back to, was it ESF or?
Well, yeah, it's federal relief funds as part of it. So
you have to tell them this kind of stuff. Right?
Yeah. Yep. I actually submitted the report yesterday.
My goal just originally was just so that anybody across the state would have access to it who needed it, and it's just there and it's free. You can use it as you see fit. And then to just get schools more connected for the kids that need something that you can't offer.
Well, and I saw the computer science pieces, and with that new requirement, I think this is a great way for those schools and educators to access that. And to your point, have some consistency. Very cool.
Any other questions for Barbara? Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we're moving on to early childhood overview.
Good morning, everyone. Director Lebo, I can see you. Can you give me a thumbs up or wave your hand if you can hear me? Fabulous. Thank you. Good morning, and thank you for time on your agenda this morning from afar, from Central Iowa. I am Kimberly Velati, and I am the Bureau Chief of the Bureau of Early Childhood. I am excited as well as honored to be sharing with you a brief introduction to the Bureau and the work that we do and some of our current and future work efforts. I am going to share my screen. And let's see. All right. There we go. Okay, and are you seeing that on your end?
Yes.
Yep. Fabulous, thank you. Again, this is a brief introduction to the Bureau of Early Childhood with some reorganization that occurred this summer. It was decided that we would bring our early childhood consultants who serve 0 or birth to age 5 back together as a unit or bureau, and really look to create that cohesive unit and work effort in the efforts that we push forward and in the multiple tasks that we have occurring within our system. The most important part that I just want to share before we start is the definition of early childhood. Depending on who you're speaking with and the context with which you are in which you are speaking, early childhood can mean very different things to very different people. Nationally, you'll see across the table here, nationally, early childhood typically means from birth into grade 3. So that's how most teacher licensure works. Some of the content and the organizational structures are built upon that. In Iowa, we tend to have a more limited definition where when we say early childhood, we're speaking about the birth to age 5 space. So just as children are getting prepared to enter into kindergarten, so everything that I'm representing today will be representing work in that space. And in just a moment, let me click again here, I'm going to show you the same table with areas that are colored being the areas that are operating or provided under the Department of Education's authority. So you see our statewide voluntary preschool program, our early Head Start, our shared visions programs, as well as our early access and our early childhood special education. We still have relationships with and influence these other areas, but early care and education is very much a broader space than just the Department of Education. And then clearly in kindergarten, we're now entering into school districts and the structure that we're most familiar with formal schooling and school-age children. So we, as a team, have looked at the various priorities that the State Board of Education has identified, and we've been pleased not only to see these driving as forces for our work around equity, around eliminating achievement gaps, and creating safe, healthy, and welcoming learning environments. Those are all things that we, as a team, and in the work that we focus on, we prioritize ourselves. We've also then sort of flipped it and looked at the reciprocal piece of this. We feel like the efforts through the programs and services the Department of Education is able to offer in that early childhood birth to 5 space, we definitely impact and positively impact each one of these priorities in various and differing ways. Most of our work really focuses encompasses the standards. And there's actually 2 sets of or concepts of standards represented here. The left side of the table is our program standards. These are standards that represent infrastructure or how programs or classrooms may be put together, how services may be offered. Programs that are operated under the Department of Education are required to follow program standards as one of the expectations from both code or rule. We also have then the learning standards on the right side of the table. We, as an early childhood system across our state, have had co-developed the Iowa Early Learning Standards. We are very pleased with that in Iowa, and our early childhood system really promotes and encourages their use across the settings that we may find young children served within. Under the Department of Education, all of our programs, and based upon our program standards, are required to follow the Iowa Early Learning Standards or offer learning standards that are aligned to them. So that's where in the bottom right-hand corner, you see something reflecting the Head Start Early Learning Outcomes Framework. Because the Head Start office is located within the Department of Education, and they are such a major and critical player in early childhood programs and services. We partner pretty rigorously and extensively with Head Start. Head Start has its own early learning standards framework that it promotes within its programs. We know there is a direct alignment between the Head Start learning framework and the Iowa early learning standards. So that is why both of those are represented. We are confident that we can say the early learning standards are represented across our various settings. The exciting part for us is also that we are able to collect an extensive amount of data in different grain sizes or in through different capacities across the early childhood space. And here is just sort of a random collection of some of those data points. Some of them are at child learning level, or what we might say child outcomes. Some of them are more at a systems level or a programmatic level of keeping track of teacher licensure that may be at play, or the individuals who are serving in our classrooms. We're excited to add in our positive behavioral interventions and support data through some work that we're doing in the social emotional behavioral health space this year. And then I also noticed, I was disappointed to see I missed one major data set that we are gaining some strong traction in related to early literacy. We also collect data with MyIGDs, which is an early literacy screener for children that represents sort of language learning or skills that are transitioning into early reading and writing acquisition. Now, these program standards and data certainly drive our work, but another component or another factor that impacts our team is the complexity of a very broad system. And in fact, we waffle, we joke, between two systems across our team. We are all familiar, the audience on this board meeting, on this Zoom, is very familiar with the educational system that represents the Department of Ed, districts, AEA systems. But we also have another system in Iowa that is the broader early childhood system. And the Department of Education is only one, quote unquote, player within that. We work with all of these other entities to really make sure that we have a broad scope of services and programs available to children and families, and that we're meeting the respective needs while also being quite cognizant of the effectiveness and the efficiency of our resources. So we're looking to reduce duplication of efforts. We're really looking to use our federal and our state funding appropriately and efficiently. Now, digging just specifically into a few programs and services we offer, one of those colored squares that I shared with you earlier on is our early access program. I won't read this all to you, but basically a general overview is this is our early intervention program that provides services to young, very young children, birth to age 3, who are at risk or may have a disability or a developmental delay, or we are attending to the possibility that they may develop it due to a condition that they have or some circumstance that they have experienced. In the Department of Education, we frequently reference this as Part C, but to most of the public, this is referenced as early access. We are excited, our efforts in this area, you'll see at the bottom a map and family guided routines-based intervention. We refer to that as FGRBI, really trying to watch our acronyms. But Family Guided Routines-Based Intervention is an evidence-based program on how services can be provided to children and families that capitalizes on the families. We don't go in and provide services as a therapy directly to the child. We encourage the family and coach the family in how to initiate and provide services to their child themselves, knowing that the service provider or the individual is going to lead the home visit, and the family is the unit with which that child's going to spend the most time. So the adults in that child's life are able to reinitiate or use those interventions over time and within the family routines and the environments that they are in on a regular basis every day. We are on a path to statewide implementation and sustainability, which I'm not sure if I have early childhood, early access colleagues, but we are ecstatic. It is very hard to move a state system towards a statewide sustainability plan, and we are so close as we have continued to work with outside partners and our AEA colleagues on this effort. Another program that we offer is Shared Visions. This really represents both a 0 to 3 or a birth to 3 and a 3 to 5 space. And it serves children that we would specifically describe as having risk factors or experiencing risk factors that may affect their development and learning. The preschools in this program must follow the state board approved program standards. So those standards that I shared with you earlier. And they do provide comprehensive services. So this isn't just about offering learning to children, but it's also helping families connect with additional resources to support that learning and development. This staff who are working in this space are preparing for our next grant cycle. This program is solely funded by state appropriation. So we typically get or receive about a $10 million appropriation, but that does fluctuate based on how our state budget is represented and what the legislators are able to add in for the shared visions and at-risk programming specifically. We have an upcoming grant cycle and they're busily preparing for that process. Statewide Voluntary Preschool Programs is probably the program that most people are familiar with under the Department of Education. This is our universal preschool program in Iowa. It is available to any child who is 4 years of age and a resident in our state, but there may be other criteria that local districts apply. So they may have some eligibility criteria that they have decided for their program to institute. The main requirement is 10 hours of instruction a week and by a licensed teacher. And probably the most exciting component of statewide for our team is that this provides an inclusive environment for children with IEPs. We know that children learn through interactions and engagement with others, and having the opportunity to have children who may have a different learning rate or a different learning need with their same age peers, learning side by side and having those conversations is really a critical piece of what statewide voluntary programs brings to the table. So we really capitalize on that and encourage districts to ensure that as much as possible that children are included in the statewide preschool programs. We also offer, as I was just mentioning, within statewide voluntary, as well as some of our shared visions programs, early childhood special education services. So many times we talk about services for 3 to 21. These are services that are offered specifically to a small section of that population, 3 to 5-year-olds with disabilities. We are so excited. We had launched through a federal grant offering us some funding for personnel development, the specially designed instruction work that helped teachers who work with children with disabilities really hone in on ensuring that we were matching children's needs to the individualized instruction that they were requiring or they were needing to continue to learn independently and on the trajectory on which we expected. And this is another area with which we are working to gain statewide sustainability. Our AEA system has been very intimately involved with this, and we're very pleased to see the data that we have from our first few preliminary years has really shown that having teachers really have some additional training within how to set up and design and deliver instruction to children in intentional efforts has improved children's outcomes through our various data we have available. And then lastly, I would be remiss if I did not include Head Start. Although the Department of Education has very little regulatory authority over Head Start. We do engage with them in many capacities because, as I mentioned earlier, they are a critical partner for us. They offer statewide voluntary preschool programming as a partner with local school districts. We know that Head Start serves our some of our children and families who have multiple risk factors, and they also provide some of the comprehensive services that I mentioned earlier. The Head Start Collaboration Office is a position that is offered in every state. And in Iowa, it's offered through the Department of Education. It may be elsewhere in other states, but we are so pleased to have our collaboration officer consultants with us in the same conversation so that preschool is really operating and having discussions around a broad continuum of opportunities for children and families. So again, as I mentioned, our team kind of waffles between the programs that are operated by the Department of Education through school districts, as well as programs that are offered and services that are offered through Early Childhood Iowa. And as we think of this context, here are our last two slides are going to kind of represent where we fall in the next few years. We see a strong relationship, and we have created an alignment between our early learning standards that are addressing the birth to age 5 space, having a very close alignment and tying into, for a smooth transition into our Iowa core, our Iowa required academic standards. And we know that by helping preschool teachers or teachers of young children understand where children are going to go in the future, they know how their instruction is contributing to children as they age, and vice versa. Teachers who are working in elementary grades understand what are some of the foundational pieces that children in that 0 to 5 space have experienced and learned about, so they understand what children are coming to their programs with and can capitalize and build upon those foundational pieces. In the next year, we have 3 big efforts that our team will be focusing on through our various work roles and programs and services. We'll continue to partner and maintain our relationship and efforts with Early Childhood Iowa and the various agencies and organizations represented there. As part of that, we have a relationship with Iowa State and the I2D2, or Integrated Data System for Decision Making. This is a system that has been able to pull data from various data systems in our state together to help us answer some vital questions in better using resources and the impact of multiple enrollment opportunities, just different ways of looking at data for more effectiveness and influence on children's learning. And then lastly, some of you may have heard about this, the USDE and Administration for Children and Families, sorry, I lost my words there, have jointly offered at a federal level a new preschool development grant. And although it says preschool, it does represent that birth to 5 space. Iowa applied for funding in 2019 and received $2.9 million that year, in which we were able to really impact our state system in multiple capacities, including the Department of Ed, but also including many of our other early childhood partners. We have now been notified that that new grant application is available. And so as an early childhood system, we will also be offering another Iowa application. All of these efforts, as well as the programs that you see listed in the middle there, then I've given you more detail, certainly impact and we believe contribute to the positive outcomes and really successful learning experiences for children and family in our state. So with that, I will stop sharing and I will say thank you very much. But I also want to offer if there are any questions or anything else I can tell you more about.
Any questions from the board?
All right. Well, I look forward to a future opportunity to connect with you and give you more detail or address any other needs that the board may have or questions the board may have at a future opportunity. But again, thank you for your time on the agenda.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kimberly.
Okay. Social, emotional, behavioral health services and supports update.
Good morning. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Awesome. All right. I will share my screen, but first I'll introduce myself. My name is Barb Anderson, and I am the Administrative Consultant for Social Emotional Behavioral Health at the department. And it's a pleasure today to give you an update on supports for social emotional behavioral health. Okay, can everyone see the screen? Did that?
Yes.
Oh, all right, excellent. Thank you. Well, I just introduced what the title is. Social emotional behavioral health really aligns with the state board priorities with these identified goals that all schools will work with their learners to foster culture and climate in which they feel safe and supported and bullying and harassment do not exist. That all learners will have access to mental health services and supports in their schools and their communities. And all schools will create environments that develop safe, again, I cannot see my notes, but social, emotional, and behavioral health. So my goals today are to help to share what is social, emotional, behavioral health? What do we mean when we talk about that? What is our comprehensive system for social, emotional, behavioral health supports and systems? To give some examples of what some of the universal supports are in our school districts, and some examples of tiered and intensive supports, and then to leave some time for question and answers at the end. So the definition of social, emotional, behavioral health actually came about over a process of months. Previously, the department and our stakeholders, when we spoke about mental health or social emotional well-being, we had a lot of different understandings. And so it was important for us to come together and to come together with a common definition so that we had that shared understanding of our work and what it meant. So this is the definition that we developed, and there is a link and to the definition and the rationale in your slide deck that you can review. But we really came up with it. It is social, emotional, behavioral well-being affects how we think and we communicate and we act and we learn. And those contribute to our resilience, how we respond to others, to stress, to our emotions. And it includes those social emotional competencies that we know are essential for learning and for mental well-being, that promote self-awareness and self-management, responsible decision-making, social awareness, and those relationship skills. It also aligned, this definition also aligned with legislation that came about in 2019 that established the Children's Behavioral Health Systems Board. And we wanted to have some continuity around and consistency around language. So when people think about social emotional behavioral health, often what may come to mind is school-based mental health services, and that is absolutely an essential service and part of the continuum of social emotional behavioral health. But really, it is a part of that and not the whole. I know that this triangle will look familiar to you. It is our multi-tiered system of support. It is our everyday decision-making framework for how we align resources with need. So when we think about that for social, emotional, behavioral health at the universal level, we want to have supports that impact and support all of the learners. And we know that about 80% of those students who come through the doors are going to be ready to learn with those universal supports. That supplemental supports may need to be available for a smaller group of learners, between 10 and 15%. And then 1 to 5% of our learners will need more intensive supports in order to be successful. When we think about, I'm going to slide back up again, pardon me. When we think about universal supports, we're thinking about health promotion, those conditions for learning. What are the environments in which our learners come to school? Are they welcoming? Are they inclusive? Are they safe? So the efforts and those supports may include bullying prevention, suicide prevention, violence prevention efforts, as well as trauma-informed practices at the universal level. I spoke last month with some of my colleagues around the conditions for learning. So this will be very familiar, but it is our measure to how we measure that universal culture and climate, or the conditions in which learners need to have in order to be successful. So the Conditions for Learning survey is that measure, and it is a part of our Every Student Succeeds Act. It is an accountability measure that also makes up the score on the Iowa School Performance Profile, and it is that non-academic measure of student success. And the overall school conditions for learning score, again, is used for accountability. And that was just a review. I know you're familiar with that from last month. In addition to that, social emotional learning it is a universal support for students. Iowa has developed social emotional competencies, and they are linked in this slide deck. But that's the process for which children and adults acquire and effectively apply knowledge, attitudes, and skills necessary to understand and manage our emotions, set and achieve those positive goals, and establish and maintain positive relationships and make positive decisions. So social emotional learning is essential learning. It is also essential for learning and to be able to learn. We'll talk about that in the next slide. Our social emotional learning competencies at the department really built on the foundation of the early childhood, early learning standards. In the past year, teams from both early childhood and our department team worked together to align the preschool learning standards with the K-2 learning targets as part of our social emotional competencies, learning competencies. And they, as you can see from slide 1, with those competencies of self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, relationship skills, and responsible decision-making. And then how those align across in the second column with preschool learning standards, that beginning foundation awareness of self and play, and then as we get older, identifying emotions and having accurate self-perception and self-confidence, and in self-management, self-regulation begins in early childhood, and of course continues to develop as we get older with stress management and impulse control, self-discipline, self-motivation, goal setting, and those organizational skills. And as I describe those, we think about it, those are really essential skills to have, not only in order to be able to learn, we need to be able to organize ourselves and be able to manage ourselves, but we also allow us to be a part of community, to be a part of learning communities that allow us to grow and be healthy. So I'd like to provide some examples of the supplemental and intensive supports that have been made available both through state support as well as some federal funding opportunities through our relief funds. Therapeutic classrooms. Therapeutic classroom is, the definition is there. This is actually in code, and it means a classroom designed for the purpose of providing support for any student with or without an IEP whose emotional, social, and behavioral needs interfere with the student's abilities to be successful in the current educational environment. And with or without supports until that student is able to successfully return to the student's current educational environment, and again, with or without supports, including but not limited to the general education classroom. There are additional components as part of Iowa Administrative Code 281.14, and that is linked again in the slide deck that is available to you, that expand on what a therapeutic classroom is and is not. With legislation that passed in 2020, it gave an opportunity to really look at, we knew that there were districts that were implementing therapeutic classroom, but there wasn't a common definition. So it was really important to be able to identify what are the key components that we want to ensure when we talk about a therapeutic classroom. What are those, and how do we support schools in implementing those evidence-based practices? So what does a therapeutic classroom entail? It is part of that MTSS, part of that tiered social, emotional, behavioral support. The therapeutic programming students need to support them across a range of educational settings or learning spaces. It's a set of services. It is not necessarily a classroom, though it can be a specific space. It does not have to be. The most important piece is, does it have those evidence-based set of services that help students to be able to increase their skills and to be able to function in return to their educational setting, to the least restrictive educational setting. And they're aimed to transition those students back to the classroom through the reduction in therapeutic supports and planned opportunities to practice those skills in a natural context, so that they're not permanent. We want students in a therapeutic setting in a program to be able to practice skills so that they're able to generalize it. Someone can be successful in one environment, but it's real essential that they're able to go back into the classroom and back into the community and have those necessary skills to help them be successful. There were two parts of the legislation that passed in 2020 and again was supported in this last legislative session. One was that it offered an opportunity for competitive therapeutic classroom incentive grant, and this required the department to create that competitive grant for public school districts to establish or begin therapeutic classrooms. It provided those upfront costs. So in 2021, 2022, that first round, there was a little over 1.6 million awarded to 6 districts. And then in August, we awarded a little over 2.3 million to 10 additional districts in 2023. The second part of that legislation included resources, therapeutic classroom claims, and that allowed districts to have sustainability. So it reimbursed school districts who were implementing a therapeutic classroom that met those required evidence-based components. They could be reimbursed for providing them to students who did not have an assigned weighting through special education. And that's a pretty important piece as we were developing and talking about what is best for what do we want to consider in terms of implementing therapeutic classrooms? Stakeholders were uniform in saying it's important that it be for all students and for students both with and without IEPs. So one of the important parts of any grant is to evaluate what are our lessons learned, what are the outcomes. We ask the grantees who were awarded the grants to complete a self-assessment of what was in place in terms of their therapeutic classroom services. And we wanted them to look at, move this over a little bit so I can see better. Their supports for what was in place for supports for qualified, committed professionals, their development of their therapeutic classroom supports, and family and community supports, and then to assess what were their therapeutic classroom components that they had in place, therapeutic and their intervention services that included identifying student needs, how those components aligned with school-wide expectations and their monitoring for effectiveness, behavior interventions plans that were based on a functional behavioral assessment and were unique to the learner's context. What was their structure for diagnosing and designing and delivering those targeted and intensive supports? And then what were the program-wide components of their program? Were they consistent with scheduled routines? Were they clearly stated rules and behavioral feedback available to support their learners? What were the regular assessments and in their instruction for social emotional competencies? Their supports for enhancing positive childhood experiences? How did they involve families and communities? So this chart summarizes the progress for our first round of grant districts assessments and their progress from the pre-assessment in fall of 2021 to the post-assessment in the spring of 2022. So you can see all of the districts made significant progress. I would say when we had webinars with them to talk about how we can support them, they were eager to learn from one another. And so the districts agreed, some of the districts grant teams agreed to share their learning and their journey, and will be presenting a breakout session at the BEST Summit next month. And so that other districts who may be considering implementing a therapeutic classroom can learn from them as well. And just a reminder of what some of the, I think, important requirements are that relates to a therapeutic classroom, that it is not required of a district to have a therapeutic classroom, and that classroom is a descriptor of an educational set of services rather than a specific place or a classroom. While it can be a classroom, that is not a requirement. It is most important that those evidence-based sets of services are in place. And then for state and reporting reimbursement purposes, the district must serve both students with and without IEPs. And they must sign assurances in the CASA system in the fall that those components are in place. This is a list of the district grantees that were awarded in the first year. The first 6: Ames, Clinton, Eastern Almaquee, Hinton, Mount Pleasant, and Washington. And then the 10 that were announced in August. Awarded the round 2 therapeutic classroom grants. I also wanted to share another opportunity for districts around intensive and and supplemental supports around mental health supports. And to talk a little bit about the Governor's Emergency Education Relief grant opportunity. So again, these were part of federal relief funds. And these funds provided competitive grants to pre-K through 12 public school districts that the governor deemed most significantly impacted by COVID-19. The competitive grants were awarded to local school districts to provide mental health supports to students, including the coordination and delivery of services and wraparound students, youth mental health first aid training, implementation, suicide prevention services, and programming. So here are those categories: mental health service delivery, mental health service coordination, wraparound services, youth mental health first aid training, and child mental health first aid training, which we know is an evidence-based training supporting teachers in identification and appropriate responses to a youth or a learner who may be struggling, and then suicide prevention for both children and for youth. So there was 8.67 million awarded through the Gear 2 mental health grants to 64 districts. Over 80% of the grantees established or expanded existing school-based mental health services, and they identified partnerships with community health providers. 20% of the grant districts identified wraparound services and family resource centers as a priority in their grant applications. 50% identified expanding training for the staff and those recognizing a student or a youth who might be struggling with a mental health or substance abuse issue. And then over 40% of the grant districts identified suicide prevention and the reduction of stigma as a priority for their grant. And then finally, I wanted to share another opportunity for schools. It was the Public Health Workforce Supplemental Funding Grant, which is kind of a mouthful, but really it supported schools in providing professional learning for school staff and building capacity for school staff around social, emotional, behavioral health. Excuse me, getting a little frog in my throat, pardon me. And the department, drink a little bit of water. The department partnered with the Department of Health and Human Services, formerly the Department of Public Health, with this grant when it received from the Center for Disease Control, Disease Control. And so that we conducted 3 rounds of competitive grants for schools. And most recently, the 3rd round was awarded this week. The grants for the schools varied between 50 to 100,000 for each district that applied, depending on their size. So I am going to pause there and open it up for questions around. I provided a lot of information and want to give you a chance to ask me any questions you may have.
Any questions? Can you tell me what a therapeutic classroom actually looks like? Give me a description.
Well, I would tell you that again, it is if we were to have the grant districts describe their programs, they would look very different, each of them, and because they were tailored to their own needs assessment. So the key components that we would want to look for are, do they have how do they identify the students that are in need of therapeutic supports, those more intensive supports? Do they have also, how are they going to meet those needs? So do they have educational staff that will be able to provide that, the appropriate licensed staff in a therapeutic classroom? How do they involve families in the process of identifying and communicating and partnering with them in meeting their students' needs? what are the evidence-based practices that they will be having, that they'll be implementing? How will they monitor those evidence-based practices to ensure that it's effective for that particular student? And then do they have a transition plan? How will a student who is part of these intensive services, how do they know when they're making progress and they're ready to return to their previous educational setting? So sometimes that may be students in the same classroom. And I think some of the questions that we ask districts to consider as they were writing their applications were, do you have a focus developmental age, and that differed depending on the application. So we have some districts who were providing services to elementary students, while others focused on older students in high schools. And those services and those supports would look very different, depending again on the needs of that particular district and building. Does that help?
A little bit, but do you have and I understand that therapeutic classroom can actually be just a regular classroom with students in there who have special needs. I mean, I understand that. But are we talking about a separate class space where these kids go and have an instructor who is somehow licensed in this area?
Most of them do. I will tell you that most of them do. And so they will have, appropriately licensed educational staff, but they also have developed, many have developed partnerships, intensive partnerships with mental health providers who would be available depending on the needs of that particular student to come in and partner with the school district in providing supports for a student. So some have programs that are more fluid, where students who need additional supports. I'm going to back up a little bit because I don't think I'm being very clear in my explanation. Part of our conversation was helping schools to determine what is not a therapeutic classroom. So for example, it is not only a calming space, where some school districts and classrooms may have an area where schools can go begin, practice some self-regulation skills and come back. That's valuable, but that in and of itself is not considered a therapeutic classroom. Some ask if going to the principal's office would be a therapeutic classroom. It is not. Or seclusion room. It isn't that. Those are not therapeutic. There needs to be all of the components. And so many have identified classroom space, but that is not part of the requirement for it to be considered a therapeutic classroom.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to take a break.
Can I ask one question? The food is here and getting cold. Yes, you may ask a question.
I just want to know with the public health workforce supplemental funding opportunity grants, how many have actually been issued? The number of grants, the number of districts.
May I get that information to you before the end of this meeting? I have a number, but I want to double check my facts. Most recently, 10 were awarded this past week. And I just want to double check on the first and the second round. I think there were 17 previously, but I'll confirm that.
Are these one-time, excuse me, these are one-time grants? Or these?
The professional learning grants, they are a one-time grant, and the timeline was pretty tight in the RFP process, and because it was a one-year grant through the Center for Disease Control. So the schools had those funds for the professional learning need to be expended by the end of June of 2023.
Funds fully exhausted.
Okay. We are going to take a 15-minute break to grab lunch. We have board reports on our agenda before we adjourn. So We'll break for 15 minutes, come back. Food in hand, we'll do our board reports and we'll adjourn. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right.
We should.
And we have one item left on the agenda for today, and that's board reports. And let's see who's not eating. Okay, Rod, you just had a drink. You want to start, please?
Thank you. Well, our church has thought about restarting our preschool.
Okay.
And we had closed under COVID. And but we've come to the realization that we probably don't have the wherewithal with the funding or the volunteers to get it back up off the ground. That's insane. That's, we really kind of hope that we can kick that thing back. We had a private preschool for, oh geez, probably 20 some years before COVID came down the pipe. But I can't speak to other small churches that have their own school, but COVID was definitely a killer for us. That's my report.
So is there a place where those kids can go to preschool?
Well, our public preschool has increased. I talked to the superintendent after we made the decision that we just didn't think that we could pull it off to try to resurrect it. They did open another classroom this year, but they still have a waiting list as well. We have two other parochial preschools in town, and so they're now filled. But the public schools still have a waiting list.
This is in Denison?
Yes.
Okay. COVID's had a real impact on trying to restart things for a lot of different organizations and the time.
Paused.
Okay.
The Community College Council met yesterday, and it's kind of a challenge when the Board of Education meeting moves for us to organize our logistics too, but we worked really hard and had a great meeting yesterday. So we had the opportunity to focus again on the non-credit career and technical education employment outcomes and reporting, and take a deeper dive into understanding the data collection, how the reports are assembled. And so just really want to highlight our Bureau and recognize the fact again that we are #1 in data collection and reporting analysis. And not only are we doing that work in just amazingly well here for our state and recognizing the outcomes that for our schools and our colleges, but we are leading the way nationally and helping other schools and other colleges be able to better report their outcomes. So if you have a minute to have a pen in your hand along with your report, I'd have you write down iowastudent.outcomes.com so you can take a closer look at our data and really spend some time in that website and look at how our schools are performing and get to know that data. And hopefully, as we work on our strategic plan and our strategic goals and outcomes, we can use that as a resource to really drive our outcomes or use those outcomes to support our goals. The other thing that we spent time really understanding is the Iowa Consortium for Higher Education in Prisons. We got an introduction to their work and an update. And if you're not familiar with that, the consortium is providing higher quality education in prisons, making sure that those folks have successful reentry as they return as citizens to our work and are contributing to our economy, but most importantly, that they have restoration of their personal dignity as incarcerated individuals. So they are in year 3 of a grant that they have been working through and are, because of the success of their programs, they're really working on finding sustainable funding sources to continue that work moving forward. So hopefully we'll have more information on that program to share with the board as they work to find sustainable efforts for that as well. The second thing that I'll share really quickly is I had the opportunity to meet with the Spencer Chamber of Commerce as they've created a really unique position at the chamber along the work-based learning and intermediary efforts. They've actually created a position within the chamber to help connect businesses with the school, with the high school, as they're doing advanced learning within the school. So being able to take high school students and get them placed in internships and businesses that are members of the chamber. So really strengthening that connection with those work-based intermediaries. So I'm really excited to see how that program develops. Right now, to their level of knowledge, working with the Chamber Association in Iowa, they are the only chamber that has that kind of position that they are funding as a chamber membership. So really kind of an exciting position to see how that grows and develops. So
They don't have an intermediary organization there? Or
they
this
do.
is an
Yep,
add-on?
they do. This is an add-on being driven by the business community. So,
You know how it's paid for?
it's being paid for by the chamber.
Just, okay, I didn't know there's any.
Yeah, membership fee.
I believe the Spencer Chamber has a foundation themselves. And I think the primary source of funding for the position is coming out of the Spencer Chamber of Commerce Foundation. So it's new. They're just getting going.
Brian?
On August 21st, I attended the open house of our new Holy Family Resurrection Elementary School, PK to 5, $8.6 million project, all with money. Interested people in the city. It was a great place to network. All the legislators showed up. Surprise, surprise. So had a good talk with a lot of them. It was a good community thing. Let's see, this Sunday, Holy Spirit Parish will be opening its new early childhood center with many infant slots, and that's a $2 million facility that was paid for all with grants. So there's and lastly, planning is underway to do another early childhood facility at St. Joseph the Worker that'll open next year. So things are going pretty well. The resurrection one was interesting to me because I was the third class to go all the way through grades 1 to 8 at resurrection. In a building originally constructed in 1961 that was supposed to last 20 years. It just got knocked down and replaced by this new facility.
Shed a tear.
No, okay. Didn't like.
I had my first NASB meeting online on the day after we had our meeting in August. And we got to know each other. I got to meet this really cool kid from Hawaii who joined in the chat, so that was cool. We talked about our student action plans and how we are going to take a health issue in our school and kind of build upon that and kind of circulate it and work, like collaborate with the board that we're on to kind of help that issue go through. So that's what I'm working on. I talked to Cassandra, my mentor, this morning about some plans that we can take and some action that we can do. So, yeah, I'm excited.
Good.
I don't have anything outside of the community college council yesterday, but I would just say that the discussion that we had, especially around the gap and the non-credit job training for those high demand jobs and the funding and how many positions that or students that they funded to date, and it's incredible. I just think removing those barriers, whether they're financial or physical or time-based, are really gonna, engage our workforce and really help our employers around the state. So again, I just think the work that we're doing at the Community College Bureau is really important.
Mike.
Not a lot to report. I have a son-in-law who's a professor at UV, does postgraduate work for teachers, and interesting to go Quality, getting kids involved in education, and then preparing later. It's just getting a little bit difficult, I think. They've had quite a bit of success. My daughter's a guidance counselor at Spencer, and the discussions I have with her, I ask her about therapeutic classrooms and how that's going for her. Her guidance counselor office is a therapeutic classroom. That's where she takes them, and that's where she puts them. It's that's again a growing concern. I think is how many kids are damaged, and I guess we appropriately deal with that, which is more and more of a huge concern. But anyway, yeah.
Brooke. Or you eat.
So the only thing I have to report is that my son started kindergarten at Greenwood Elementary in Des Moines, and so he's happy as a clam, and I am absolutely in love with the school. Going from he went to a preschool at a church nearby our house, and so they really kind of hold your hand, and like there's a lot of communication. And so my friend said that when he goes into kindergarten, like you'll expect that, but they are super awesome. The principal, like I've emailed her several times because I'm like an obsessed parent with my child, I guess, and I was like, I'm really sorry to keep on emailing you, but and she responds, and she's super friendly, and everyone was awesome. When he goes in line to get his breakfast in the morning, it's the only way I can get him out of bed in the morning is to say, if you're late, then you won't get breakfast in the morning. They all know his name and everything, and every student's name that comes through is absolutely amazing. So super impressed.
Were they tears shed on the first day?
Oh, no.
That could be a traumatic event.
Yeah.
kids and parents.
It was, I'm not gonna lie, it was stressful. Like I was like, it's like, if he's okay, then I'm okay. But like, if he's not okay, then like, I'm gonna have a meltdown. But he is happy as a clam, so I'm fine.
I did attend the community college council meeting yesterday for, well, not all of it, but a good share. And I was impressed by the data that was presented, and also the program to impact prisoners. I thought that was neat. To be interesting to see how that all unfolds and what success they have. And I'm sure there's a lot of challenges along the way. So that was interesting. I did attend the Iowa Valley Community College board meeting. That's why I left the community council, and they met in Iowa Falls, but it was like a quarter mile from my house, so it wasn't a big travel thing for me, but it was interesting. And I went there to represent the state board to show interest in what they're doing and to show support for what they're doing. Their agenda was fairly brief. It was a little over an hour meeting, but it was dealing a lot with collaborations that they're having with other businesses throughout the Iowa Valley Community College District, which extends from Iowa Falls area all the way down through Grinnell and beyond to the southeast. So it's the largest district, and as time allows, I plan to hit Nyack and Iowa Central and maybe Hawkeye Tech in the future, just to show some support. I know that the Board of Education is interested in what they're doing. So the thing I have to report on is that I'm 2.5 months into a 4-month interim superintendent. Part-time, it's at the school I originally started my career at. It's a pre-K 3 through 6th grade building. And it's neat. It's neat to be around the kids and the staff. And the only big issue I had is when I was doing classroom visits, I had the opportunity to escort a 4th grader to the therapeutic room or the guidance office at that time. And you just know that there's a lot of kids that have challenges just to be successful. But it's also kind of interesting from the fact is that when I get back into the DE mode as far as reporting to the DE, so I get to look at that from both sides of the equation. And one of the questions I've been asking is about the new Achieve software that's being rolled out, and I'm talking with a very limited number of people. They weren't crazy about the training, but they said the actual program and the actual benefit they see from it, they're positive about it. So when you have a group of people that are positive about a change, that's a good thing. Anyway, that's what I have to share. Did I miss anything as far as report? Did somebody forgot to say something?
I would just mention that the Future Ready Iowa Summit is next week in Des Moines, I think on Wednesday. And I believe it is still open for anyone who wants to attend. It is on Wednesday at the Iowa Events Center. I think iowastem.gov has the registration. They're going to have called All Options on the Table, so a lot of it will be showcasing some of the successful programs. So like the virtual welders stations that we saw here, they demonstrated those in the past. They'll talk about apprenticeships and other programs that are available, as well as highlight STEM activities. So it's always a good interesting conversation and networking opportunity if you're able to attend.
Anything else as far as reports? Hearing none, I'll call for a motion to adjourn. So moved. Is there a second? All in favor, indicate by saying aye. And aye. We are adjourned. Let's take a